Next, I'd like to invite Todd Dalotto to stage of Can Research and Education. Thanks for driving down from Corvallis today.
Well, hello, Eugene. Nice to be back here. I am going to start off with a bit of trivia. Let's see, let's go that way. That's the direction we want to be going in. Okay, trivia question, and the winner gets a copy of my book, The Hemp Cookbook from Seed to Shining Seed. The question is, what city was the very first hemp food business in the U.S. Started in? Eugene, yes. Book for Kathy right here. She probably already has one, but. Yes, well, Kathy is right. Yes, I founded Hungry Bear Hemp Foods in early 1994, just a mile away over in the Whitaker neighborhood. There's a Russian Orthodox church there right now over by the Red Barn. And, you know, I came into this town, an environmental scientist, an environmental activist, and a vegan food crafter. And so I decided to put all those skills together and start a hemp food business. And I found Eugene, to be a uniquely qualified place, to do something that's odd and out of the ordinary, but necessary for the survival of our planet. So that's why I'm into hemp foods. Yeah. So anyway, that's Hungry Bear Hemp Foods. I also, anybody remember Seedy Sweeties? We actually have a Seedy Sweetie, my first roving Seedy salesman in the audience here. Anyway, I went on to author the Hemp Cookbook, which I just gave to Kathy. And if you fill out those feedback forms, you be in the drawing for 2 more of those books later at the end of the night. So stay tuned. Anyway, the basic hemp food products that are made from the seed, the base materials, we're talking about whole seed, which is what I started my business on. And I started, I got into hemp foods not only to combine all those skills, but like Roger said, you got to show people you're wearing hemp. You got to let them feel it and touch it. For me, it was getting hemp into people's bodies. And that was important, helping them feel the health benefits of hemp. Getting in touch with that farm that it came from, the soil and the plants. And so whole seed is the best way to do that. There are, of course, some mainstream palates that, may not appreciate the crunchiness and getting shells stuck in your seed. But nevertheless, hemp seed is awesome whole. And we were actually, we first started importing our seed from China, and federal law states that your seed must be dead in the U.S., when it's imported. And the way to do that typically is steam sterilization. So me and some colleagues got together and found a way around that. And so instead of buying these steam sterilized Chinese seeds that, steam sterilization basically kills the flavor, the nutritional value, the shelf life. So what we did was we sourced our seeds in China, had it shipped to Santiago, Chile, where they don't have that stupid kill your seed law, and then pressed it into oil, and then shipped the oil and the seed cake up to the U.S. separately, rendering it incapable of germination, but nevertheless legal and unsterilized. So we were the first to get out non-sterilized hemp seed oil in the U.S., which made a big difference for our flavor and our health. Unfortunately, shipping seed from China to Chile to Portland is not exactly sustainable. And sustainability is the other reason I got into hemp. But those days we were figuring, hey, we're going to sacrifice a little bit of sustainability for now, and it'll pay off for long-term sustainability later. So we kind of had to do that in the beginning. And we've been working like hell ever since to get it grown on U.S. soil. And thanks to Courtney Moran and Floyd Przanski and Jack Harrer and Dave Sieber and a number of heroes to the hemp movement, we've got hemp planted in U.S. soil. We've got hemp planted in Oregon soil. So when we figured out the technology, actually I didn't figure it out, but once someone else figured out the technology to de-hull the seeds, we got hulled hemp seeds. That makes it really palatable for the mainstream palates, and the shells don't get stuck in your teeth. And it can also be ground into butter really easily, pressed for oil and such. And then of course we have oil is another product. And the highest quality oil, the first pressing, the virgin pressing, the cold pressing, that's what makes the best nutritious food. You get a second pressing, or you add a little solvent to the pressing, and you really get out everything else. And that makes a good industrial quality oil that Dave Sieber puts into his hemp shield, and he can tell you all about. From there, we can turn those seeds, the oil, the flour, into all kinds of products, beverages, vegan cheese, just the sky's the limit. It's a very versatile flavor and very nutritious. In fact, it's one of the highest in unsaturated fatty acids, and and actually the highest in linolenic acid. And so these essential fatty acids are so important to human health. They're so important that actually every cell of our body is made up of essential fatty acids on the cell membrane. And these essential fatty acids on the cell membrane play an extremely important function for our immune system, for passing things from the bloodstream into the cell. And it's the essential fatty acids, the lipid bilayer of the cell membrane that functions. And when you put the right essential fatty acids into your diet, the right essential fatty acids your cells will be comprised of the right essential fatty acids. Half of our brain is made up of fats. So if you're a meat eater, you're a meathead, literally. We're fatheads, and that's a good thing. So really, we are what we eat. If we eat saturated fats, from animals primarily, saturated fats aren't very reactive. They're not very useful. They're very good for insulation, biologically speaking, but our body will do with using saturated fatty acids when it doesn't have enough essential fatty acids. But we want those essential fatty acids in our body. They enhance our immune system. They enhance our brain function. They enhance just about every cellular function you could think of. And we're nothing but cellular function. Protein, we got 23% protein. Damn, that's pretty high percentage of protein. It's not the highest. Soy is, of course, a lot higher in protein, but it's got all 8 essential amino acids and then some. They're very digestible. That means that they'll assimilate very good in our bodies. Our kidneys don't have to overwork to process them. Damn good proteins. And I was thinking, I've been eating so much hemp in my life, and protein is the building blocks of my body. Damn, I must get myself certified somewhere for a 90% hemp content or something. So eat hemp. You are what you eat. If you want the world to become beautiful, eat hemp and be beautiful. It'll all work out. Thank you. Yeah. And it's also low carb, so Atkin will love that, and it's high in dietary fiber. Just damn good food. So with essential fatty acids and proteins in this hemp seed, it's very high in macronutrients. So it makes perfect sense and is very complementary to mix hemp seed with green foods, with things that are high in micronutrients. Spirulinas and kale and all the good colorful veggies. It just complements really well. So, you have a good high diet of veggies and stuff, mix some protein in it, you've got a really good, nutritious, complete diet going on there. Yeah. So hemp is also incredibly good on the skin and the hair, just the same way the essential fatty acids work when we eat it from the inside out. It also works from the outside in, and it absorbs nicely in our skin. A lot of skin problems are related directly to a lack of essential fatty acids. There are a lot of reasons for skin problems, kidney issues, eating toxic foods, stress, lifestyle things. But it's extremely helpful for skin problems, eczema. And so you can make soaps, lubricants, lotions, shampoos, all kinds of things with it. And then, I'll let Dave tell you all about the industrial qualities of hempseed oil, but I'll just let him do that. So the biotypes of cannabis, you can grow edible seeds from any biotype or any species or subspecies of cannabis, but sativas are typically the ones that have been bred to be farmed as industrial hemp seed. But you can grow any hemp plant to be prolific in producing hemp seed. And some of these marijuana, cannabis, ganja varieties will also produce very good nutritional seed as well. So, but of course, hemp seed breeders, of course, the specialized cultivars for hemp seed have been bred specifically, for high yields, for being able to be mechanically harvested, some to be multi-utilizational, so you could mow down the top of the hemp seed tops, and then also swath down the stalks for fiber. Very versatile crop. Like I see, so here's a very tightly densed hemp farm. This was in Delta, British Columbia. I visited their farm the very first year Canada was able to grow hemp in '98. So this row has been swathed down. What you do is you take an elevated thresher and you thresh off that top layer of seed. And then another tractor would come behind it, like a swather or something, and then swath down the stalks. This farm, they weren't really prepared, and their first year, they swathed the whole thing down, seed heads and all. They didn't really know what they were doing. And so they had to hire East Indian migrant farm workers to come there with little clippers and baskets and clip off all the seed heads to bring it back to the barn where they had this nice big thresher that's stationary in the barn. So they were only able to break even by selling little 1-pound bags of their 18-acre harvest. So they had a fun time, but they learned their lesson. But this is just 3 miles from the U.S. border in 1998, which was a big deal. So you can see how tightly packed they are. That also lends towards sustainability in such tightly dense planting. You choke out the weeds. There's very little, if any, need for pesticides, but herbicides. Oftentimes they would do an herbicide application in the very, pre-planting just to, but once these get established, boom, there's no competing with this plant. There's the seed heads. And we had a little fun. We did a little green harvesting. We beat out some seeds. We got out we sieved some of them. Usually you do this when it's all dry, but we couldn't wait that long. We were having fun. And then we just winnowed some out for fun. But that's the old-fashioned way to do it. Really, we're looking at seed processing facilities that look more like this. This is where we're going to get into some economic viability. We're not going to be economically viable by, using a little winnow. But yeah, we need infrastructure to make hemp seed industry work here. Just like with fiber, we need the processing. I'm so used to saying processing because I'm always dealing with Canadians dealing with hemp, but processing facilities nearby the crop. If it's not within 200 miles of the crop, it's not economically viable. So you need seed crushing facility. We've got one in Rickreall, just right north of Salem. They built this massive seed crushing facility anticipating all this GMO canola that was going to be grown all over the valley. But that never happened, so they've got this empty, I don't know what they're doing with it, but they got a massive seed crushing facility. So if we had a seed industry in the Willamette Valley, we've got a place to crush it. But then again, we probably don't want to grow hemp seed in the Willamette Valley because you need a lot of pollen in order to grow hemp seed. So we want that in the Snake and Columbia River valleys. But nevertheless, there's room for every sector of the hemp industry. I'm into this for sustainability. With sustainability, we're looking at preserving the ecological environment, protecting public health, sustaining human communities, and upholding animal welfare. Hemp, whether it's for seed, for ganja, or for fiber, cannabis is a well-suited crop to meet sustainability goals. And the objectives, we're trying to minimize the inputs of energy, water, and nutrients. Cannabis is very nutrient lean. It doesn't need a ton of fertilizers. It doesn't need very much pesticides, and it's fairly drought tolerant. That doesn't mean you can get an awesome crop in a drought. It means you could get, maybe a decent crop in a drought, but, nothing is drought proof. But hemp does considerably better than cotton, for instance, which is enormous amount of pesticides and water and labor and everything. We want to maximize carbon sequestration. Plants that grow really fast and on annual production, when plants grow, they grab carbon from the air, okay? We don't want the carbon dioxide in the air. When it's in the air, it's warming our planet and making it hard to breathe. So plants do this amazing job of sucking in that carbon dioxide, turning it into plant cells, and then we eat it or smoke it or make buildings out of it. So keeping the carbon in plants, in materials, in the soil especially, that's where we want the carbon. So hemp is doing an awesome job at pulling carbon dioxide out of the air and creating more oxygen. Yeah. All right. We also want to maximize biodiversity and mutualisms, and that goes along with organic farming and other sustainable farming practices. To me, growing cannabis is not about growing the plant, it's about growing microbial communities. The microbes are really where it's at. If the microbes aren't happy, your crop isn't happy. If you kill your microbes with pesticides and herbicides and toxins, then you're killing your plant's immune system. That's what microbes are doing for the plants down under the soil. They're the immune system. They're outcompeting pathogens. They're also helping to mineralize organic nutrients to make them available to the plant. They're helping feed the plant. So when you have happy microbes, then you've got efficient use of fertilizers. You've got an immune system that you don't need pesticides and herbicides to maintain. The microbes are doing your work for you. So if you make the microbes happy, then the farmer, has a lot of easier job and has a better chance of making a profit on their crop because they're not investing in pesticides and fertilizers. It's not all about ecology and microbes and everything. It's also about sustainable business practices. It's about treating your workers well, giving fair wages, gender equality and equity. And when you make your workers happy and they're able to spend money out in the community and they're able to be happy, reasonable people, then it supports a sustainable community. And that's another gift that hemp has. When I started this thing in the early 90s, we were a bunch of hippies that were, with no business skills, trying to save the earth, learning how to start a business. And most of us perished, after 3 years, when the big money came into the hemp industry. We started off with all this idealism, but then there's a reality. But there's a cooperation there. Where you have capital investment, you also have an opportunity for financial sustainability. But, make your company happy, make your workers happy, it makes the community happy, makes the world a better place. And cannabis has a particularly unique kind of cultural community that really supports these kind of goals. And am I running down on time?
You're good.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah. So anyway, so just a little specifics on some of the sustainability, greenhouse gases. Can you believe 74% comes from energy consumption? This is the issue I have with indoor cannabis growing. I think indoor cannabis growing is on its way out, for the most part, not entirely. Indoor cannabis growing is basically the product of one, prohibition, because you got to hide it, and two, because of some really amazing Dutch growers who developed indoor, very sophisticated indoor systems and made that kind of the gold standard for cushy, wishy, squishy green bud. But nevertheless, we don't have the need for indoor cultivation anymore. We've got greenhouses, we've got a legal system that'll leave us alone. So we got to be moving this stuff out into greenhouses and the great outdoors. The sun is better than any high-pressure sodium light and a lot cheaper. Yeah. Yeah, and hydroponics is boring, like Kathy said. And less nutritious. Yeah, and the hydroponics doesn't benefit from the microbes. There's no microbial relationship. It's all mineral nutrition. Anyway, and 12.5% is from agriculture, which is interesting. But the main greenhouse gases, we're talking carbon dioxide, which I talked about earlier, methane. Methane goes a lot towards cattle grazing. So if we could start replacing our protein sources with vegetable proteins, with hemp, the myth of you have to have meat in order to get all your protein is just not true. Hemp has all 8 essential amino acids, even better form than meat. So if we could switch to hemp protein, we not only improve our health, but we also reduce an enormous amount of methane gas being produced. Yeah. And plants are also really efficient at sucking up nitrous oxide and other nitrogen. The microbes, you ever hear of nitrogen-fixing bacterias? They don't actually, where do they get the nitrogen from? They're sucking gases from the atmosphere through the soil. When you water your plants and you get it all waterlogged and it has no air in it, that means there's no air in it. That means there's no nitrogen or gases in it. It means anaerobic bacteria thrives, but when your soil drains and it displaces that water with airspace, and that airspace comes from the atmosphere, which contains carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide and nitrous compounds. So that's how the bacteria fixes it. They suck the gas. So that's also why it's important, why you need to have a good watering regime, so that you always have airspace in your soil. It's healthy for the microbes, and it helps to convert these greenhouse gases into nutrients a lot faster and more efficiently. Yeah. And we also, nutrients, phosphorus. So, if you read any grow book, that's more than a few years old, they'll advise you to dump massive amounts of nitrogen during vegetative state and massive amounts of phosphorus during flowering state. And that's completely wrong and inefficient and dangerous, because we're running out of phosphorus. Phosphorus is a mined nutrient, and there are only a small handful of identifiable sources of phosphorus on the planet. One of them is, the main one in the U.S. is in Florida. Most of the other ones are out of the country. They say we have somewhere between 30 to 60 years left of our phosphorus reserves. So let's not contribute to that. The reason why the grow books tell you to dump massive amounts of phosphorus on your plants is because phosphorus is immobile in the soil. It means chemically, the phosphorus is locked in the soil. It doesn't move unless it moves with some water or a microbe grabs it and mineralizes it and brings it to your roots. Otherwise, it just stays put. And so when you don't grow organically, when you grow hydroponically, or you don't treat your microbes well, the only way to get phosphorus to your roots is to be pouring this potent mineral fertilizer directly on your roots. It needs to make root contact in order to be absorbed. And that's why dumping massive amounts works. The other idea is to enhance microbiological habitat. And then, you can pour a little bit of phosphorus on, and the microbes will be happy to mineralize that little bit and make it highly useful for your plants. So just that will save a lot of phosphorus use. Let's not contribute to this phosphorus glut, okay? Nitrification and eutrophication. We're talking about nitrogen pollution. When you massively fertilize with nitrogen, you leach out a lot into the groundwater or to the surface water or even to the water treatment facility, and Eugene has a hard time dealing with it. And when it hits the surface water, it feeds massive amounts of algae and other plant life that chokes out all the native and good forms of, and then also massively dosing with nitrogen or phosphorus also limits the plant's ability to absorb other nutrients. So if you add too much phosphorus or add too much nitrogen, it's going to lock out calcium, and you're going to have to dump on massive amounts of calcium. So you get into this cycle of dumping massive amounts of nutrients just to get to your balance point. So there's a lot in cultural practices we could do to minimize the use and waste of nutrients. Pesticides, yeah, like I said, cannabis is naturally has a lot of pest resistance, especially when coupled with microbes. The one thing is we haven't seen a large-scale cannabis production in Oregon. We produce a lot of cannabis in Oregon, but this year is the first time we're seeing more than a dozen or so acres. And when we start to see dozens of acres and eventually hundreds of acres, then we're going to start to see some of the pest problems that are associated with monocultured crops. The hemp boring beetle, for one, is one that I'm concerned about. So right now with our marijuana crops, we have spider mites and things to deal with indoors that, is a no-brainer. Yeah, you're going to deal with these pests indoors. But outdoors, nature is pretty much taking care of itself. We hardly ever have a pest problem, except broad mites have kind of made their way around to the outdoors. That's probably our biggest concern, maybe a little russet mites. But other than that, every other significant pest of cannabis hasn't really shown its face. And so the people who are growing acreages of hemp or CBD need to be extremely responsible with pest care, because one irresponsible farmer can introduce a pest and make it endemic to the area and screw up everybody's hemp crops and make it really difficult to grow it organically. So that's an incredible responsibility of hemp farmers, is to do proper pest control. And transportation, it's expensive to move this stuff, especially fiber. So we want to do everything we can to minimize the distance we have to transport hemp, and that also goes along with creating an industry that can serve our state's needs, as well as having a good export economy. But probably the most significant distance with hemp is traveling from the farm to the processing plant. That's probably the biggest cost factor. But we could also be using shipping and railing when we're traveling long distances. Those are the two most efficient forms of transportation. I used to deliver hemp milk around Eugene on a bike cart. And so we should be using bicycle and electric vehicles for local deliveries and stuff. And also, just the whole supply chain should be, needs to be designed in a way that's most efficient for transportation. Water. Hemp is very lean on water. It has a very deep root system. So by the time, especially fiber hemp gets established, is about the time that the rain is dropping off in Oregon. And by the time the rain's dropping off in Oregon, those tap roots are deep enough to where they could still access some soil moisture. So they're, eventually, you have to do a little bit of overhead irrigation here in Oregon, I anticipate, but it's very lean on water. And there's also a lot of opportunity in hemp production to use gray water systems and such. Soil erosion is a huge problem with most types of commercial agriculture, and so hemp has a prolific root system. All cannabis does, and when you have a prolific root system, it has tap roots and it has lateral roots, and it just grabs hold of the soil, and it grabs hold on the soil while the plant's living. And then even after the plant dies, when the roots decay in the soil, the bacteria and the microbes produce exudates that help bind the soil particles into aggregates, and that makes awesome soil quality. And it also makes empty spaces, so it makes micro pore space for air to travel. So you want to till and disturb the soil as little as possible, whether it's for hemp or cannabis, because those roots have set that soil for you for your next year, if you could just disturb it as little as possible the next year. But that enhances soil aggregation. It enhances the microbiology of soil. It enhances the structure of soil and prevents soil erosion. And then you couple that with other soil, and then when it's growing, it produces enough soil canopy coverage to protect the soil from the sun beating down, from the rain beating down, and then when you harvest it, hopefully hemp farmers are wise enough to use cover crops and to rotate crops. When you use cover crops and you rotate crops, there's always something growing in your soil. When there's always something growing in your soil, you always have microbes that are happy. And then when you change crops to a different crop in the same soil, you're making a whole new set of microbes happy. And they'll outcompete some of the pathogens that the other microbes from the previous crop weren't able to outcompete. And so that's how crop rotation beats out those pathogens and keeps your soil healthy. So soil is our best friend, and we wouldn't be here without it. So we got to take care of it. If we don't do those practices, the soil will be unstable. You'll get soil erosion. Whenever you see the Willamette River all brown after a rain, that's because probably mostly agriculture. There are other soil erosion, construction and such, but most of that brown in the water comes from poor agricultural practices, soil eroding into the water. And that's bad news. Us cannabis farmers are smarter than that, and we care more about our planet, so we're going to keep our soil vital, covered, and enhancing our habitat, and living the good life. Yeah. So I should probably wrap up, huh? Oh, yeah, sure. Whatever. All right. So this is just an example of some sustainable agricultural practices. You're probably familiar with some of those. Agrobiodiversity it goes along with what I was saying about, we're growing plants for the microbes, not really growing the plants. Permaculture is when we're integrating our human food and plant systems to mix nicely with natural habitats. Biodynamics, Rudolf Steiner's concept. Organics. Unfortunately, we won't be able to certify any hemps in the U.S. as organic for a while until the federal government wises up. But we could still practice organic methods. And Clean Green is one of the certifiers that kind of, certifies crops based on organic standards. So that's probably about the closest we could get to organic certification. But third-party certification is really a good way of standing out. And not many people know this, but the Oregon Department of Agriculture has a program, a marketing service program that can help you create a third-party certification like salmon safe or something special to cannabis. And they'll either do the certifications or adopt the standards so that third-party certifiers can certify it. So that's an opportunity in cannabis. If we want to look at some sort of type of agriculture that encompasses our values and our practices and everything of organics, of microbes, then we could create our own certification supported by the Department of Agriculture. Yeah. Biointensive integrated pest management. IPM is a system that instead of just spraying on schedule, spraying when, you're basically looking at, you're monitoring your crop very closely. You're looking at economic thresholds, how much damage or how much insect population can it go up before you take an action. Sometimes you might have an unwanted pest, but it's not at so much of a danger that, and you might take no action at all, and that might be fine. But anyway, lots of graphs to work with in IPM. Yeah, and pest predators, conservation tillage, nutrient management, precision agriculture. There's lots of different tools and resources and methods out there to make your crop sustainable. And if you're not a farmer, then support the farmers that use these practices. Yeah. So I'm not don't have to repeat too much of what Courtney says. She's the guru on hemp law. But one thing I just did want to mention is we do need some control area legislation in the future to make peace between all of the sectors of hemp farmers. And I think it's really easy to do. I think our best growing regions for hemp seed and hemp fiber are in the Columbia and Snake River valleys. That was supported by Darrell Ehrensling's study back in 1999 on hemp feasibility in Oregon. So it sounds pretty simple to me. Flowers west of the Cascades, seeds and fiber on the east of the Cascades. But there's a lot of Deschutes County growers who might want to move that boundary kind of around Deschutes County. But Oregon's a unique place. So anyway, I could answer as many questions until I get the hook.
Wow, thank you. That was so thorough. But another really remarkable aspect of this plant is that it's for its phytoremediation qualities, where it actually heals damaged toxic soils like mushrooms do. And also there's we've come a long ways with decortication, or being able to strip the bark from the stalk. They've actually even got tractors out there now that can actually do the decortication instead of doing the retting process of allowing it to rot the old way in the fields. So yeah, thank you. That was exciting.
Sure, thank you. And remember, it's the microbes that do a lot of that bioremediation too.
Yeah, Todd, I didn't know if you knew that the Demeter Association in Philomath is probably the #1 certification place in the country. They spoke here a couple sessions ago.
Oh, good.
But it's called Stellar Certification, and the website is demeter-usa.org. And that's biodynamic too. And I want to say, could we at least grow clones in this part of Oregon in greenhouses and then ship them to Eastern Oregon? And I wanted to say I have 3 books you might want to look at. I got Steve Allen's book from Ireland, Building with Hemp, and I also got Hemp Husbandry, about the early American farmers that grew industrial hemp, and there were 15 pests and diseases that had surfaced. This is mostly in eastern United States. And then also the Britons took the herds of hemp, which is the leftover product after you use the high-grade fiber for textiles, paints, and paper and all that kind of stuff. They were throwing them in the dump. Now they're building houses with them, with the hempcrete. And in China, they call it Chinacrete, according to Jerry Rust, who spends time in China. And it's modeled after Isochandra from Madame Perrier in France. And another book I want to recommend you get, I just bought 11 copies of that, Steve D'Angelo, Cannabis Manifesto. It's his 40 years of dealing with hemp and marijuana and medical, recreational, and he actually says that Jack Herer walked in with the first manuscript of Emperor Wears No Clothes in Washington, D.C. when he was kind of burned out about the hemp thing. And the last thing is, you might not know, I've announced this before, that hemp is the companion plant to potato. Yeah, according to biodynamic agriculture research.
Thank you, Kathy. You are a wealth of information.
Hi, Todd. Thank you for your presentation. As usual, you're thorough and you have a lot of answers. From my recollection, hemp's been in Oregon for several years, yet I don't really see too much hemp farming. I've read that there's 11 licenses issued per year. Can you tell me, or the audience, how many hemp farmers there are in Oregon now?
Well, yeah, last year I think there were 13 licenses issued, maybe only, 9 that actually got in the soil. And I think Courtney, I don't know if she's still around, but I think she said there was 70-something as of now. 73? Yep. And how many of those are actually growing fiber hemp? Do you know? Yeah, I think I met one person who's growing fiber hemp, but
So
but actually anyone who's growing cannabis can grow some grade of hemp. You know, whether you throw it in a chipper shredder and make hempcrete out of it, you know, but there's hemp in every marijuana plant.
So there seems to be a lot of opportunity. I think I read 600 million per year in USA, the industry. Is there other states that are doing a lot of hemp production?
Well, again, Colorado is doing mostly CBD. There may be a couple people doing fiber out there. I think Kentucky is probably more on the fiber side, though.
Right. I've been seeing CBD sold over the counters in other states that the medical is not legal or recreational. Do you have an idea how much plant would make an ounce of CBD oil?
Well, that depends on the potency of the plant,
Right.
of course. So, you know, most marijuana plants and even the high CBD cannabis plants, you know, they could yield, you know, anywhere from 15 to 25% total cannabinoids. So that would be, you know, 15 to 25% of the flower yield.
So you're talking about cannabis and not hemp.
Hemp is cannabis, but
Well,
yeah, yeah. So the CBD farmers, some of them are growing marijuana cultivars that have been selected for CBD. Some are growing industrial hemp cultivars that have a CBD. Basically, there are two genes that control THC and CBD. It's THCA synthase and CBDA synthase. And when you're dominant for the THC and you have a recessive CBD synthase, then you'll have a high THC plant that, you know, most of what we experience have a dominant THC with a recessive CBD or a double dominant for THC. But when you have a double recessive for CBDA synthase, then you have you can have a plant that will produce, you know, 20-25% CBD. But when you have a recessive CBD, then you have much lower quantities, and it's really hard to get it out of those lower quantities. So a lot of these industrial hemp cultivars, even a lot of the registered certified hemp cultivars from Europe and Canada, some of those have a lot of CBD, and some of them have none, and some have negligible amounts. And so the ones that have been discovered to have high CBD are now being utilized for CBD production, being crossed with high THC strains or other high CBD strains. And so there's a lot of selection going on. And a big challenge that the U.S. hemp farmers have in order to get those registered cultivars in Europe, which have been shown to grow high yields of hemp, high yields of seed, and are registered cultivars. It's hard to import those here because even though the DEA will allow us to do it, those farmers out there, they work to breed their seeds so that they can get plant breeders' rights on those seeds. And so they have a lot of money tied up into those cultivars. So plant breeders' rights aren't protected in the U.S. because it's a federal program. So the European and Canadian farmers aren't going to ship their seed to the U.S. Into a country that doesn't protect plant breeders' rights, because then their hard-worked cultivars become public domain. So I don't know, it kind of goes off on a tangent, but that's some of the complexity in getting high CBD cultivars. But a lot of them come from industrial hemp, some of them come from marijuana, some come from ditchweed, but somewhere along the line, someone's lab tested it and found out it's got a lot of CBD, and they kept growing it and crossing it with other things.
So how do we cross between the hemp grower and the cannabis, medical marijuana, or recreational? Tell me the difference between there.
Well, it's within the same species. They both interbreed very easily. So it's just a matter of finding a male of hemp and a female of marijuana, and just putting them together and letting them do their thing.
Making the pollen. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So is there what's the regulations in Oregon now? Is there
the regulations?
Yeah.
About breeding?
About getting your license in and
for hemp?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you want an industrial hemp license, whether to grow industrial hemp or CBDs, you basically fill out an application. It's 2 pages to the Oregon Department of Agriculture. It's easier than getting your driver's license. You pay $500 if you want to grow it. You pay another $500 if you want to handle it. And you pay another $25 if you want to keep seed the plant for the next year. So the most in licensing you'll pay for is $1,025 if you want to, grow it, handle it, and so basically that's it. You send in. It's not a license anymore, so it's a registration. And so it's really easy. Just submit your paperwork. You don't need the security requirements of the OLCC. You don't need all of those requirements of the OLCC. It's really easy.
It seems to be there was some discussion about the location of hemp for the pollen versus where the medical and the recreational would be growing. So the state hasn't really made any boundaries for that.
Yeah. Last year, a lot of Southern Oregon growers were rightfully up in arms about all of these hemp farmers coming in. And then it only became dawned upon in the middle of some legislative rulemaking hearings that the licensees actually weren't growing fiber hemp, and they weren't growing male plants, so there really wasn't anything to worry about. And so instead of saying, "Oh, screw you, you're getting one up over on us," saying you're growing fiber hemp but growing marijuana, CBD. Instead, the ODA was and the legislature was very accommodating in last legislative session by making some changes that make it very accommodating for CBD farmers to operate under an industrial hemp license, as Courtney explained a little earlier. And so it's very easy to get in that way. Yeah.
Just one more question.
Sure.
Just real quickly, it seems like instead of us paying just to get started, that we should be incentivized and be allowed to go through the learning curve that we need to. That's a question for Courtney, if we can add that into this bill coming up, if there's a way that we can actually be given a lot more room to learn and grow. Because is this registration just for 1 year, at $1,000, or is that for 3 years?
The registrations now are 1 year. Yep. Yep. And it's unlimited acreage. You know, you used to be have a minimum of 2.5 acres. Now you have no minimum and no maximum.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Todd. Thanks again for making the drive and sharing your exquisite knowledge with us tonight.
Thank you.